Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Florida. My name is Scott Morgan, off Motor City Madmouth. Great crew lined up today. And just to give you an overview of what the broadcast is all about, the Fire Up Florida, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was a lot of it over the weekend. We're going to, over the course of our show tonight, we're going to talk about the Miami Hurricanes, Miami Marlins, Miami Dolphins, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, the good, the bad, and the ugly defines what has taken place lately. And with that said, the crew that I have here is Greg Fuchs.
Good evening, everybody.
Avi Greenwald.
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
All right. And last but not least, Madman Mancini, my brother from another mother. All right,
Always
Mark.
a pleasure working with the best in the business.
Yeah, we enjoy it too, Mark. I enjoy working on Sports Talk Saturday with you and Bruce Kessinger. I always make sure that that's a part of my schedule. It's a show I really am passionate about. With that said, okay, Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you and lead off.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster for Florida sports fans this weekend. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We're actually going to have two doses of good, though. But let's start with the ugly. If you are a Miami Hurricane fan, I feel sorry for you. I mean, that was just a total embarrassment on Saturday. It's hard to even explain. Man, I read some quotes from the players after the game. I think they just weren't emotionally ready. So that goes on the coaches and the players. They thought they could just walk out on the field. They were 26 points favorites, and they just got their butt whipped from the first seconds of the game. They turned the ball over the first three times they had the ball. Before you know it, Middle Tennessee State had 17 points on the board, and they didn't look back. And one of the amazing stats from this game, and I'm not sure if this is some type of record, I haven't heard anything about it, but Middle Tennessee State had 3 touchdown passes of 98, 71, and 69 yards. And if that wasn't enough, they had a non-touchdown pass of 89 yards. 4 of their plays accounted for 64% of their yardage, and those 4 passing plays was almost as many yards as the Canes had in the entire game. I mean, I don't know how a team, and the secondary is supposed to be one of the strengths of this team. I don't know how you give up 4 passes of that length against let's face it, even though they won the game, give them full credit, they're an inferior opponent. But you got to show up to play. You can't just walk in and expect to win. I mean, Appalachian State has shown, they're competitive in all their games this year. I mean, you just can't overlook these teams. I mean, Mario Cristobal has to be totally embarrassed. I can only imagine what the practices are going to be like for the next 2 weeks. They don't play this week, and they need 2 full weeks to fix all of their problems, which are many. First and foremost is just be mentally ready to play. I'll be real curious as to what you guys thought about the Canes' woeful performance this week.
Well, I'll lead off with this one because I was at that game, okay, and it was ugly. Number one, I was at the post-game media availability at Cristobal. It makes us wait for a while anyways, and it's a good thing he did because he had to gather his thoughts after what took place. When Jake Garcia entered the game, everybody was cheering for him because, unfortunately, Tyler Van Dyke had a problem. 3 interceptions off the get-go. Middle Tennessee jumped on him. And that's the first time they've ever beaten, I believe, a top 20 ranked opponent as well. So, when you look at what took place there, you're right. There isn't a lot to say. They made Chase Cunningham look like a Heisman Trophy winner that night. They really did, and it was as bad. And let's face reality. When Miami plays a weak schedule at the beginning with Bethune-Cookman and Southern Mississippi, and then they go out to Texas A&M. They kept it competitive against a Texas A&M team, which, by the way, did lose to App State. You're 2-2. I hate these weak schedules, and I think they're a false sense of security. And so far, I think Mario Cristobal will definitely fix it. But, yeah, there's no question they came out flat. I mean, the numbers are staggering. I think that's the thing that was hard for me is just the staggering numbers with Middle Tennessee versus Miami of all teams. But sometimes you have to lose hard. And you're right, Greg. These 2 weeks of practice are going to be bad. You have a bye week off an embarrassing loss. That it hurts a lot harder. So I was at it, had to watch it, had to hear it. I'll be writing on it. We have a lot of work to do as well as on it as well. So I believe the Canes will be ready when they play North Carolina, and maybe it's good that they go out there and get a little bit of taste of humble pie. With that said, Avi Greenwald, give me your thoughts and takes on the Canes debacle.
Well, if we could grab any kind of a high note out of that game, I think the Hurricanes played with a lot of passion and energy. Obviously, they had that highlight fourth quarter kick return, looked really good, but at the end of the day, they just couldn't get it done. Secondary was getting torched. I mean, just torched.
Right.
They couldn't contend. The speed wasn't there to stay with the receivers. A lot of turnovers early. You really can't do that if you want to win a ball game. They couldn't execute, weren't getting any tackles, no protection on the quarterback. Just not going to get it done.
Okay. Mark?
Well, 4 words that run with, and 2 are lost these days, is accountability and communication.
Right.
And I think after the Texas A&M game, that still is filtering through the Miami Hurricanes locker room. They haven't really got that. And it falls, like Greg said, it falls on the head coach. It doesn't, John Wooden once said, no excuses, make adjustments. They haven't made adjustments. And that's the big problem here. And I don't know what kind of team we're going to have here in Miami. Cristobal has come in here, and if he's going to be the next Howard Schembeck or the Jimmy Johnson, it's going to take time, but you got to put your stamp forward on this. He hasn't shown me a hell of a lot in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, I haven't shown anybody a lot in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, Miami Hurricanes have a lot of work to do. All right, Greg, on to the next one.
Yeah. One last thought on the Canes. Tyler Van Dyke he got yanked in the third quarter. Third straight subpar performance. Jake Garcia came in and played well, and he's not your ordinary backup quarterback. He is a highly recruited guy. So I think Van Dyke's going to be on a short leash going forward. All right. Some, I'll call it bad news, a little shocking news. The Miami Marlins interrupted our football weekend by announcing that Don Mattingly, the manager, will not be back next season.
Wow.
Can't say I'm shocked. He's been there 6 years. The team has not done well. His winning percentage in those 6 years is around 43%. They have the 4th worst record in the league this season. Do I think it's Mattingly's fault? No. I have said a few times on these podcasts, managers get fired because they didn't win games. But I adhere to, why don't they win games? 90% of the time is they don't have the talent. This Marlins team for the past 6 years has not had an abundance of talent. And to blame Mattingly for that is wrong. Seems like the manager is always the easy one to blame. Seems like the general manager, or in this case, maybe even the owner, because they haven't spent a lot of money. That's where the real blame lies. Marlins going forward, they just need their everyday lineup. Chase Chisholm, J.J. Bleday might be the only 2 guys you really want back. They have a plethora of starting pitching, though, and you're going to see him trade a couple of those guys for hitters. So sad to see Mattingly go, a classy guy. Be curious to see who the next hire is.
Yeah, I was at the immediate availability with Kim Ng in the bottom of the second inning. I asked him, what? I understand the decision that both of you guys moved on, but what are you going to do about the offense? Your pitching's good, but your offenses need some work. You think anybody's going to sit there and tell you that Avisel Garcia and Jorge Soler are real big pickups? Yeah, we all saw how that worked out. Yes, Jazz Chisholm, to me, was that big loss, but you need to do a lot better than that in free agency. You do. You have a good pitching staff. You really do. I think listen, I work with Don Mattingly, one of the greatest people I've ever worked with. I got to work with him on a daily basis for the last 3 years. It's just been great to be around Don, and he's a very knowledgeable guy. You didn't manage successfully in L.A. and take a dump hill when you come to Miami. They have deeper pockets in LA because the Dodgers are going to spend money anyways. The Marlins they are a small market team is what they are. They have to make the most of their situation, and they have to develop. So Don Mattingly let me tell you, his phone will be ringing off the hook. They really will. And I can tell you what, I give you a couple places, and these are just, I predicted that Mattingly wasn't going to be the Marlins manager months ago. I really, really did. So this was no surprise at all. And, so it comes to a point where you see body language and you see voice inflection. So when I'm there, and folks, if you want to see some of the media availabilities for us, go to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. I've got a lot of them up there as well. So, in fact, while I'm segueing into that, folks, subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel, or visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you struggle and have a hard time following us on our website, go to youtube.com and then find South Florida Tribune. You can subscribe that way. So I'll continue on with my thoughts about Mattingly. Don Mattingly will get a job, and he'll get it sooner than later. He's a Midwest guy. He's from Evansville, Indiana. I think the ideal place for him, and I know the Cubs aren't making a change, but I can tell you a place where I think could use it would be the Chicago White Sox. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see Joe Girardi get a job with the White Sox, even though he's from that area. But that's speculation on my part. I don't have any inside information. He obviously leads with the franchise most winning, I believe, 400 and was it 37 wins, Greg, right? So he'll add a few more to it. So Don Mattingly, to me, is one of the best people I have ever worked with. And, you know, it may be a break now, but I can guarantee if there's a little break, he'll be looking for his next spot, knowing that he can only hope to have a little bit more resources with that. All right, Avi, some thoughts about Don Mattingly.
Well, I definitely agree with you, Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly should easily find a job sooner than later. Probably, I wouldn't even be surprised if he has a job in a month after the season, a couple weeks after the season ends, for sure. But what can I say about the Marlins? Going into the season, I really thought they had a real good pitching staff led by Sandy. It just didn't work out. So they're going to have to do something. Usually when you have a pitching staff like that and you don't have much batting, you're going to have to make a move. So they're going to have to get rid of somebody. They're going to have to up their batting and see what happens. Got 3 games left, 3 series left. You got the Mets, the Brewers, and the Braves. Hopefully they can end on a good note, and we'll see what happens. I would really like to see what direction they're going to go in on manager, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing question. To me, you know, the Marlins' job is such a very sticky situation. It really is because of resources. I think Don Mattingly did as well as he could with what he had to work with. I don't think there's any fault. And when Marlins managers leave, they do get other jobs. They really, really do. And a lot of them are mainly a result of, to me, circumstances that they have. So, Mark, any thoughts about the Don Mattingly situation?
Well, you know what? I like Don Mattingly a lot. This is just another one of those things where, you know, we saw Derek Jeter walk out. Now Don Mattingly's let go. I mean, the only great thing about this, and, you know, they didn't fire him during the middle of the season. They're letting him finish out the season, but he'll resurface somewhere. Somewhere along the line, the Marlins are going to have to realize that you got to get talent in there to win ball games.
Yeah.
And they're in a division where, you know, 3 of those teams are going to be going to the playoffs. You know, in order to compete, you got to get the horses, and they just don't have the horses to contend with right now.
True. No, they definitely are void on the talent side for sure. I mean, let's face it. Losing Jazz, Garrett Cooper was an all-star. Of course, we know Sandy Alcantara is a stud. I like Pablo Lopez if you give him any kind of run support. They did have a lot of bad luck due to an excessive amount of injuries. Losing Max Meyer didn't help. So they've got a good – they've developed well. But, yeah, Mark, you mentioned a good point that Derek Jeter left early in the year, so he obviously saw some red flags. Don Mattingly did the best he could with what he had to work with. There were high hopes coming out of spring training. Unfortunately, they didn't come to fruition. So I'm with you all the way. Greg, any thoughts? Hey, Mark, by the way, you know – I don't know if you got it in the chat, but you're a little bit dark, so you might want to go out there and make an appearance.
Yeah, lights just went out with the rollbacks here in California. We're kind of like in a power surge right now. So
all right, well then you know what?
I was trying to say up.
Okay, well then now that he's explained it to him, because I want to make sure
up, and that, you know.
I want to make sure they're watching Fire Up Florida, not Dark Shadows. But now we understand that.
Exactly.
So, Hey, why not have a little bit of fun on these shows? That's what it's all
Yeah,
about.
you gotta roll with it. When something goes on, you gotta know how to improvise.
Oh, we do. And, we have a lot of fun doing it. So, Marco, at least, this edition is Fire Up Florida, not
Yeah.
Dark Shadows starring Mark Mancini. Okay. All right, Greg, some thoughts about the Don Mattingly departure.
My only last thoughts, I'll be real curious as to what the Marlins do in the offseason, not just replacing the manager, but I think they're going to be making several trades, and they'll spend some money to upgrade that roster. I mean, they just can't keep rolling like a AAA lineup out there.
No, they can, and it's reflected in the attendance figures. You get between 8 and 15,000 at that ballpark.
Yep.
That really is. All right. Well, yeah, I knew we were going to address Don Mattingly. I've enjoyed working with him. I really did. To me, it's been a very big. To me, I've enjoyed it so much. He's one of the nice people, and he's a good baseball person. Knows a lot about the game, and you can only learn as a writer, reporter, broadcaster from what this guy's been around, where he's been. I tell you what, I've worked with the likes of the Sparky Andersons, the Tom Lasordas, and the Jim Lelands. And I will tell you right now, to me, Don Mattingly is a consummate pro. Let's go to the chat room for a moment. Long time Mets. Mike Arango is a long time Mets fan, but I will say that Don Mattingly is one of the best hitters from 84 to 87. I absolutely loved him. If not for injuries, he would have probably ended up as one of the greatest hitters ever. No debate there. Michael, I actually think he belongs in the Hall of Fame, despite a 13-year career. That's just an opinion, and I'll continue to say it. And hopefully down the road, the Veterans Committee will get him there. I can tell you one thing, having been to Cooperstown before, like I have been, Don Mattingly's paraphernalia is throughout the Hall of Fame, even if he doesn't have a plaque there. And Michael Arango continues to say, so sad the Marlins couldn't give him any talent to produce what he could have. Yeah, Mike, again, you're on point there as well. So Don Mattingly will get a job sooner than you think and deserves it. And yeah, we'll see how long his little break is, which won't be long. I don't see him as a broadcaster. I see him getting back in the saddle and managing very quickly. And another guy that I do see getting another managing job, I do believe, will be Joe Girardi as well. So with that said, let's segue over to the Miami Dolphins. Greg, take over.
Yeah. Enough of this bad and the ugly. Let's get to the good. Let's get fired up. The Dolphins beat the Buffalo Bills. Who saw that coming? Dolphins had lost, I think, 7 in a row to the Bills, and most of them were absolute blowouts. And this was one of the more bizarre football games I've ever seen. If someone told you after the game that Buffalo ran 90 plays to 39 for the Dolphins, what would your reaction have been? Must have been like a 63-3 game. The Dolphins defense obviously did not play great. They bent a lot, but they rarely broke. Despite those 90 plays and the 400 passing yards by Josh Allen, who threw the ball 63 times, they only gave up 19 points. I'll take any Bills game the Dolphins play. I'll gladly take holding the Bills to 19 points. So just it was like I said, an odd game to watch because it seemed like the Dolphins offense was never on the field. And the one thing I thought that was odd about this game was Buffalo's defense was missing their entire starting secondary, and 2 defensive tackles. And I thought, as long as they can protect Tua, which they did a decent job of, they should be able to just wing this ball downfield like they did against the Ravens the week before. And until the game-winning drive in the fourth quarter, they didn't do that. I mean, that really surprised me. Now, in that game-winning drive, they finally threw to Waddle once. I think it was like 35 yards. And then on 3rd and 22, they hit him for 45 yards down the middle that set up the game-winning touchdown. But that was a game of attrition also. Several offensive linemen for both teams got hurt during the game. And I've seen a lot of games in Miami in September, and they always say the heat. And sometimes you see guys cramping up. Seemed like everybody was cramping up yesterday, especially Stephon Diggs. It was, like I said, a game of attrition. Who was left standing at the end? And, when Buffalo got down there with like 2 minutes to go in the game, 1st and goal inside the 5-yard line, I figured that was it. But like I said, that Dolphin defense bent, but it did not break. It's helped out by a bad pass by Josh Allen. McKenzie looked to be wide open in the end zone. But, you got to execute. If that had been Tua who threw a pass like that, Dolphin fans would be up in arms. What a lousy arm he has. It shows you that even guys like Josh Allen can make bad plays at a time. And, Buffalo should have won this game. A host of mistakes. They mismanaged the clock at the end of both halves. Could have gotten field goals if they had killed the clock properly. They missed a chippy field goal of 38. The only turnover in the game led to a short touchdown by the Dolphins, which is another reason the offense didn't spend a lot of time on the field. They had like a 2-play drive for a touchdown. But just, wasn't pretty. And as I said in my article, you should never apologize for a win. So let's hear from the rest of the audience, see what they think of the game.
Well, first of all, let's go out there and talk about the fact that, to me, the heat did play a factor. Now, if I understand correctly, that the Dolphins are on the shaded side and the Buffalo Bills are on the exposed side, right?
Home field advantage. Yeah.
Right. So when you have a home field advantage and the sun is draining you big time, then the Buffalo, and I guess when you look at the trade-offs, to me, Buffalo gets hammered in the heat and Miami gets hammered up in the cold. So, that's what makes it so interesting. Mike Arango makes some interesting comments. If you're watching, this is what he's got to say, and then you guys can comment on that as well. So I actually thought Buffalo would win by a lot, but the Dolphins certainly showed me that under Mike McDaniel, he's off to a fine start. He really is. You wonder, I know there's talk about the injury. They initially thought it was a concussion. It's a back injury. That's why Tua struggled to get back on his feet. But all in all, you got to give Miami credit. They did win it ugly, but a win is a win and nobody cares. I'll take a victory any way that they can get it against a Buffalo Bills team, which many think could still win the Super Bowl. And I still think the Buffalo Bills are the best team in the division long term. But got a hats off to the Miami Dolphins, though. This team here is playing awfully well. I don't think anybody expected them to start out 3-0.
I think the Bills are better, but doesn't matter. Win's a win.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. That's for sure. So, but take it from there, Avi. What do you think?
Look, it wasn't pretty. Like you said, Dolphins got it done. Stopped Josh Allen on a final drive. It was really scary stuff. Tua, at one point, got hurt. We were worried about that. Going forward, I'm actually a little bit worried about his durability. Will he be able to withstand these hits going forward? But at the end of the day, Mike McDaniel's team executed, and they did what they needed to do to get the W. I'm really proud of what the Dolphins did as a team as a whole. They dug real deep to get this victory, and it paid off. So,
well, Greg pointed out when Buffalo dominated time of possession 40.40 to 19-20, and you still win by over 2-1 in time of possession. That's pretty good. I've always said the best way to go out there and deal with a quarterback like him is either one, dominate the time of possession, which Miami would have done to keep him off the field, or two, play exceptional defense. Evidently, the Dolphins subscribe to theory number 2. With that said, Mark Mancini, it looks like you got a little bit of light back. Thank you very much. If you didn't, it wouldn't matter. We can still get the audio out of you. So give me your thoughts about the Dolphins and the Bills.
Well, New England, Baltimore, and Buffalo are prominent teams to beat here. So you got to give credit where credit's due. Short week, Cincinnati coming up Thursday. This is going to be an interesting test. It's another high-powered quarterback that you could be able to contain. Josh Allen, 400 yards there. They put him in wraps, but, Burrow is going to be addiction. And we'll find out if Tua can lead this guys to the promised land. That's the questions that are going to have to be answered. Unfortunately, they don't get answered in September. They get answered in January.
Yeah, but, from what I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, I think that if Tua is not ready to go, I think Teddy Bridgewater is in line to get the start on a short week. And Avi makes a good point. You wonder about durability issues with Tua. I'd like to see a guy be able to play 15, 16, 17 games a year, which he's yet to do.
Yeah,
but
he was injured at Alabama. He's been injured in Miami, so I concur with Avi on that.
Right, so you better make sure that your backup quarterback is good, and you'll find out what Teddy Bridgewater is really all about. But the reality of the situation is you know what? this is a make or break year for Tua. Are you going to be the man? They're certainly giving you all the targets. You got Jalen Waddle, and you also have Tyreek Hill with a sufficient running game. And more importantly, they brought in an offensive mind to get Tua on track. I think what's interesting when you compare the Miami situation versus what's occurring with the New York Giants is you brought in Brian Dable to try to fix Daniel Jones is what you've done in what we consider a make or break year. And of course, the Giants are taking on the Cowboys tonight. I'm not watching it. Of course, we're enjoying this broadcast tonight. And now you've got a guy like Mike McDaniel trying to get Tua straight. And of course, our Dolphins are doing a good job providing him with some good weapons. So
Game management.
yeah, their game management's good. So, I'm not a bandwagon guy, but I know the Dolphins coaching staff has been anything but stable. Brian Flores wanted to give up on Tua. So the Dolphins are under pressure knowing that you want to make sure that Tua was worth a fifth pick and not him being compared up against Justin Herbert. And we're going to segue to what happened to him in a few minutes. But give Miami credit. If they can pull out a win against Cincinnati on Thursday, then they're going to have 10 days to get fixed up and rested up a little bit as well. So
I think the big matchup should be our defensive line. See how Christian Wilkins can really get through that offensive line and get to Joe Burrow. Pass rush will probably be a big thing to look for. Bengals, I think they have a big test, honestly, against the Dolphins to see if they can continue what they did last week. Dolphins are really going to be bringing the heat. Like I said, though, I'm a little bit worried about the short week. Dolphins really had to put some work and really had to get some energy to get that W. So it should be interesting to see what happens.
people can say what they want. I don't like the Thursday night games. I know they're for revenue purposes. I get it, but I don't like them. I know
I love them as a fan.
Tough on the players, for sure. Love them as a fan, but tough on the players, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I've been dealing with it my whole life. The Detroit Lions play on Thursday on Thanksgiving, so I understand the short day period from the Sunday over to Thursday. Nevertheless, I've never been crazy about them, but I don't make the decisions. Nobody cares what the heck I have to say about them anyway, so I'm not going to waste any breath that I'm definitely going to need. So any closing thoughts, Mark, about the Dolphins situation?
Yeah, I think what we're going to find out is because if you guys see the Dolphins up close, but I got to see what this team can do in December. I got to see what they can do when temperatures hit 30 below.
Right.
They have problems, and a good football team will figure out a way to win these games. So they're heading in the right direction. I know it's a short week, but I want to see after Cincinnati where this team stands. Because it's a tough division, guys, from top to bottom. I mean, the Jets are stumbling of late. New England's trying to find themselves, but Buffalo is going to be there all year. So it's going to be interesting to find out what position the Dolphins, go forward on this as far as the playoffs in the AFC.
Fair enough. Okay, final topic of the night, Jacksonville Jaguars. How do you not have a show with them on it? You have to. First of all, I'm going to ask everybody a question here. Did anybody think that Jacksonville Jaguars had a chance out with the Chargers over the weekend? Short answer, and then Greg can go over some of the particulars. Greg?
I thought they had a chance if Herbert didn't play, but he did. Threw 45 passes, so he seemed. I didn't see the game, so I guess Herbert was okay. And they just didn't win the game. They kicked their butts all over the field. I mean, 38-10 on the road against the Chargers. Just an impressive effort by Jacksonville a week after just destroying Indianapolis.
But the short answer, Greg, and then I'm going to get into particulars. Did you think they had a chance going into this game?
Not with Herbert playing.
Okay. Avi?
I honestly did not think they had a chance, not with that defense they were going up against. And the only chance, like you said, it was if Herbert wasn't playing.
Okay, fair enough. Mark?
I said on one show, don't be surprised if Jacksonville can beat them.
Well, you did. That's why I asked the question. All right, now, Greg, go into the particulars.
Yeah, and, Trevor Lawrence, year 2 is a lot kinder to him than year 1. Is it experience? Is it Doug Peterson? Is it having more talent around him? Probably a little bit of all three. Second straight week with no turnovers, 28 out of 39, 262 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Just a great game. And the Jacksonville defense, I remember back in the days of Blake Bortles, it was really the defense that carried the team. I don't think this defense is as good as the defense was back then, but they have played well this season. And Jacksonville is a team to be reckoned with, especially in what is probably the weakest division in the NFL.
Avi, you're obviously familiar with the Jaguar situation. That's how I got in contact with you.
Well, at the end of the day, I think the Jaguars took advantage of the banged up Herbert and the early exit of Joey Bosa in the first quarter. James Robinson looked like he was on a mission, running everywhere. Trevor Lawrence had some real poise in the pocket. I loved seeing that he was using his going through his progressions on his reads. He wasn't just going with his first read. Really had some zip on the ball. Really impressed. Defense played really physical. Turnovers early, got them to lead early. I really think that's what did it for the Jaguars, and they just didn't look back. It was a great game for the Jaguars.
All right, Mr. Mancini, the guy that's had confidence in the Jaguars, will give you as many I told you so moments as they continue to win ball games, Mark. So go ahead. Let's talk about the Jaguars, but more detail.
Well, good teams win at home. Great teams win on the road.
Right.
They haven't had a coach in Jacksonville that can coach in quite a while. Doug Peterson is a player's coach.
Right.
They stopped the 18-game road losing streak. They haven't had a blowout since 2001 when they throttled the Vikings in Minnesota. I believe it was 31-3.
Right.
And let me tell you something. That Hall of Famer called Peyton Manning, who lost his first 9 starts, the people that were bashing Trevor Lawrence in his first 2 years, he lost his first 9 starts as well, too. So this guy could be heading somewhere. But let me tell you something. In football, I don't care what anybody says. Defense wins football games, and they smothered Herbert. They kept the Chargers in check. They hardly had the ball. And I think they're going to go into Philly and kind of throttle that high-powered offense with Jalen Hurts and company. So this is a team that's believing in themselves, and they're playing on house money, boys, whether it's the weakest division in football or not. They still got the best quarterback in that division, and I think they're going to do some damage if they get there.
God, Mark, I love the analogy house money because that's exactly what they're doing too. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, the coach for Peyton Manning, wasn't it Jim Morris Sr., I believe, at the beginning? So Jim Morris Sr. So you have one coach where it didn't work out. We all know that Trevor Lawrence, it wasn't his fault that Urban Meyer was just outright awful. And that Doug Peterson's first thing he says to Trevor Lawrence said, you know what, just forget about everything last year. I guess the only thing Trevor Lawrence probably say, at least I cashed my checks and I survived the year. So,
well, you don't think there's going to be bulletin board material in Philly with Doug Peterson going home?
We'll get into that in a moment. We'll just stay on point. But no, I'm glad you did bring it up, Mark, and we will touch on it in about a minute or so. But let's face the reality. It could not have started off any worse for Lawrence with Urban Meyer. Marvin Jones, I was actually out there for the last couple of games, including the one where they ended up beating the Colts, and Carson Wentz got run out of town. And, when hearing Lawrence and hearing Marvin Jones and the rest of those guys, they were just glad the season was over. Darrell Bevel, tried the best he could to calm things down for the last few games.
Miami now.
I know. Yeah, I know. He's under Mike McDaniel. And actually, that was a good hire for the Dolphins.
Very good.
But to me, Trevor Lawrence is giddy right now. I got Doug Peterson, who won a Super Bowl as a backup QB and then won one as a coach. And, everybody was thinking that Byron Leftwich did not want to take that job because they want to work with Trent Baalke. Well, you know what, Byron? Shame on you, pal, because when you get an opportunity to get a head coaching job, you need to take it and not look for reasons why. Because I know Jacksonville was interested in hiring him. But when everything settled down, Doug Peterson, without question, was the right choice. And to me, for Lawrence to have him after having Dabo Swinney, he's thrilled. I mean, you have a great culture there now. They added Christian Kirk, James Robinson, the most underrated back on the planet. And by the way, for whatever it's worth, he's only an undrafted free agent, so you can find talent, whether it's in the draft or outside of it. So I'm really happy for the Jaguars. And I remember the Blake Bortles era, and I saw the Jaguars beat the Buffalo Bills 10-3 at that game. It was an ugly game, but Jacksonville still got the win. Nevertheless, it doesn't make any difference. So I hope Jaguars do well, and I am so thrilled that Trevor Lawrence ended up with a really, really good coach. That, to me, right now. I don't whether people want to say that division is weak or not. I don't buy into that. To me, if you get remember, you're only playing 6 division games, so you have to win a lot more outside of your division, and you have to take them one game at a time. It's not like you're in baseball where you're playing 18 games against your division rivals all year, which will change next year to begin with. So more power to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I hope they keep it going, and I'm going to go back to Mark's point. Okay, that you talk about bulletin board material with Doug Peterson going back to Philadelphia.
What a story.
Yeah, that'll be a great storyline for sure. But you know what? They let him go, and he won the Super Bowl. So for him to get another opportunity in Jacksonville, where the tradition is far different than they are, the Jacksonville and Doug Peterson is built for a king, and I think he's going to work out well. So forget the bulletin board material. All Lawrence has to do is continue to do what he's doing, develop, and he has a great coach to do it and some good weapons both on the running side and the passing. I think they have a pretty good attack on both ends. So Mark, now that you're nodding your head, you can take over.
Well, let me throw a little more things into this equation. What's going to happen at the link on Sunday? Trevor Lawrence coming out of Clemson, Jalen Hurts coming out of Alabama. Here we go again.
Here we go. Should be exciting. Should be exciting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they've seen each other in college as well. Good point, Mark. You're on a roll tonight. Light or no light, but at least you have the light now.
Well, but, even you could throw, Travis in there, the running back, and Edinen, and you could throw in Devontae Smith. And, man.
Devontae had a huge night.
Yeah, he did. That figures to probably be one of the better football games. I think it'll be over the weekend for sure.
Hurts looks like a much better quarterback so far this year.
Absolutely. They should have their hands full next week for sure.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is developed. I'm not going to sit here and give him any MVP stuff.
I want to give a quick shout out. How about the emergence of Zay Jones? Guy was catching balls everywhere on that field. Obviously, the defense had their eyes on Christian Kirk. Well, what do you got? You got Zay Jones. And also, the other addition, Evan Ingram, was also looking good out there on the field. So he's got some weapons now.
Yeah, and Kirk had a good game, too, yesterday. And they also got Etienne involved. He had 16 touches yesterday.
Yes, he did. He looks really good with the ball in his hands. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be one of the better matchups of the week. I really do. I'm sure Mark Mancini will be back in a moment if he is. Been a great addition regardless. But, let's face the reality. The Jacksonville Jaguars are a team that's really heading in the right direction. They really are. I know Shad Khan is a very patient owner. Sometimes it's not easy to make the right hire, but when they were able to go out there and bring in Doug Peterson, I've always thought that was a good decision. I really do. And they're drafting well, too.
That defense led by Josh Allen.
Right. Trayvon Walker, I haven't heard anything about him. Was he efficient yesterday or not, Greg? Do you know?
Absolutely. Right in the middle. Yeah, he's doing really well out there as well. Right behind Josh Allen is leading them. And, they were just forcing turnovers. Turnovers was the name of the game with the Jags, forcing them all over the place. So they really deserved it. They fought hard, and they got their win. Look forward to next week.
Yeah, amazingly enough, too, when they secured the number one pick, the sexy pick at the time was Aiden Hutchinson. But then as you got closer to draft day, Jacksonville went with the kid from Georgia, which obviously they probably seen him enough over at that Florida-Georgia game. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. And the Lions ended up with Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, he was destined to be there, right, in Detroit.
Yeah, it almost seems like really both players were destined to be where they were.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson had a huge game last week, speaking of.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson he's a good pick for him. And I like Trayvon Walker. It's one of those things that, to me, it kind of worked out real well. So, Greg, anything else you want to add to this?
So I'll have some closing comments going back to the Dolphins. Two things. Not only are they 3-0, depending on what the Giants do tonight, either only 2 or 3 teams undefeated in the NFL. Not only did they win the last 2 weeks, they beat Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, the 2 most dynamic quarterbacks in the NFL. And even though both of them had very good games, the Dolphins still found a way to win the game. So a big pat on the back for the Dolphins. And also, if you watch the NFL Network or ESPN yesterday and today, the two most popular videos came out of the Dolphins game. You had the butt punt that went for a safety in the end zone. And then you had the reaction from Bill's offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, at the end of the game when they couldn't down the ball that kicked the field goal. And he just went nuts in the broadcast booth, which I found quite humorous.
Yeah, that's a tough
But
one to
those
see.
are like the two biggest videos in the NFL this weekend.
Tough one to see, man. I'm a big Ken Dorsey fan too. I think he's going to make a great coach one day. But yeah, that was a tough one for the guy. I can only imagine. Tough loss at the end for them, so I can understand his anger.
Yep.
Well, I give him credit for intensity, anyways. Hey, you know, let's face it, he was a good quarterback at the University of Miami, and he was extremely intense. Well, we have a couple minutes. We'll just add one little nugget to this whole thing. Any thoughts about the Green Bay Packers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, Greg?
I think I fell asleep during the game. That's how exciting that game was, which was to be expected. Two good defenses, and both teams were missing a bunch of wide receivers. So everyone thought it would be a low-scoring game, and it was.
Yeah, turnovers. Turnovers seem to be a thing on both sides of the ball. Both of them were just popping the ball out everywhere. The main thing I'm mainly concerned with the Buccaneers right now is their offensive line. It just doesn't seem to be giving anybody time. Leonard Fournette is barely getting through there. I'm really concerned with that offensive line. Tom Brady is just not looking the same. He's not getting the protection he's used to.
Right.
But yeah, it was a shootout. You know, it came down to the end of the game. Couldn't get it done. Give it to the Packers for holding on and getting the victory. Absolutely.
Good points on both yours. I know Mike Evans, well, you talk about taking a one game to have off. That was not it, especially against a team like the Packers, you know. But that's Mike Evans' fault. It's some things you don't do, and you don't come on the field like he did. And the NFL will crack down on it, and they gave him exactly what they had to do. But Mike Arango says if they play Green Bay, if they play again, Green Bay would lose. I mean, really, Evans from Tampa Bay is better than Green Bay's
be missing
during the entire staff loses. That might be, but right now, at least as of yesterday, the Packers are able to make the best of what they have. And the reality of the situation to me is that Aaron Rodgers, if he has a good year with these younger receivers, to me, I think that I hate to use the word legacy. I really hate the word a lot. But think about it. Devontae Adams is 0-3 with the Raiders. Okay. And Aaron Rodgers right now can get these young guys as well as a few veterans on track. And of course, Sammy Watkins continues to miss all the time anyways. What do you expect? So I actually picked Green Bay to win that game. Tom Brady's not getting protection. Leonard Fournette is struggling to get old. And the Buccaneers, the wide receiving core is still depleted. So
Rodgers seemed to be warming up the Romeo Dobbs yesterday. I think he caught 7 or 8 balls.
That's what I was just about to say.
Right. And as these guys start to develop more and more chemistry, you would think things would progress well.
He's going to emerge. Romeo Dobbs is going to emerge as the number one, I believe, real soon.
That's a good point too, Avi, because you hope and pray that one of these guys does emerge so that Rodgers finds his go-to receiver. I was actually on a show earlier this morning when we were talking about it, and I told one of the guys that was opposite me, obviously on one of these streaming shows, I said, listen, you know what? Aaron Rodgers, to me, if he can make a lot out of what he has, more power to him. Yeah, this will be one of his better acts. It really will. And with the point that I was bringing out is I think all of us can remember that at one point the NFL schedule was 14 games, then went to 16 and then 17. And this guy, tried to be a smart aleck and said, well, there's 14 games left. I think he was only 25 years old anyways. I said, pal, you haven't been around long enough to go that once upon a time, the NFL had a 14-game season, and they ended up going ahead and having 6 games. So it just goes to show you some of these people don't realize, and no fault of his own, he's only 25 years of age. He's talking 14. I was trying to give him a history lesson via Google we'll see whether or not it ever resonates with them anyways. But usually it takes teams about 2 or 3 games to get in sync anyhow. But once upon a time, there was a 14-game season is really what it was. And as a result, that's what we have to deal with. So on that note, this concludes this edition of Fire Up Florida. Before we sign off, Greg, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. You can follow my articles on southfloridatribune.com, and on Twitter, you can follow me, gfuchs at Gregory Fuchs.
All right, Avi.
You can find me on Facebook at Avi Greenwald, or you can also find me on Jags Life, also on Facebook. You can find me on NSPN, also on Facebook.
And of course, I gave you the particulars earlier, and I'll give them to you one last time in case you're just joining us right now. And that's this, okay? Subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel or visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Kudos to Candy Ebling, does a remarkable job with the website. She really does, making sure the shows get on there as well as the written content. And follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you struggle finding us through the website, just go to youtube.com, and then you can go out there and find South Florida Tribune and subscribe that way. Nice job by Mark Mancini, even though he was having some technical difficulties in Southern California due to power outages and whatnot. But Mark's a really good contributor here for the show, and we're eternally grateful for that. I know what you guys are up to next week over the weekend, but Candy Ebling and I will be covering the NASCAR race up at Talladega. And for a lot of you folks know that I actually had an opportunity to drive on Homestead Miami Speedway over the weekend and clocked 147.54 miles when I had an opportunity to drive one of those vehicles. I want to tell you, they are tough to maneuver for sure, but it was certainly worth an opportunity to do it. And I will look forward to working with Russell Branham, who actually coordinates the event out in Miami Homestead up in Alabama. And and Russell and I have some things that we're hoping to get taken care of on this platform as well. So meanwhile, Greg, outstanding job. Avi, proud of your effort tonight. You did a really good job. Mark contributed nicely as well. And me, well, I'm just me, and looking forward to seeing you guys next week on Monday night on Fire Up Florida. So on behalf of my crew, good night, everybody, and enjoy your week. Catch you the next time. Good night.
Good night, everybody.